Don't forget, everybody, these teams are fighting for their share of a $10,000 prize pool. So every single point that they can eke out will be important in the grand scheme of things. And we will tune in again to RDU, who has been the best performing individual player of the entire weekend, with his pick between Lich King and Nozdormu.
Yeah, I do favor Lich King a little more myself, but I know that RDU is a pretty big fan of Nozdormu overall, so interested to see which way he's going to go here. There's also the nemesis, George and Nefarian, available in the lobby together, neither of which really see that much play anymore, but I remember the very, very early days of Battlegrounds where the interaction between those two heroes was particularly cute to see.
They can go fight off in some other lobby, some other tavern, because RDU will be sticking with the Lich King here. Generally, I do think this is the stronger hero in the meta, but maybe it was a small consideration that beasts are banned from this lobby, so you can lose some of the synergy that you get with Lich King in the early game, putting the Reborn on something like a Kindly Grandmother, but double Elemental Start, that is some economy.
Yeah, no reason not to freeze here. This does not by any means signal RDU's intention to buy this second Elemental. He is simply freezing this shop because the only possible Tavern 1 shop that he cares about has 2 more Elementals in it, right? So he's actually increasing his chances of that happening by freezing this shop. But still, in most scenarios, I'm pretty sure he's just going to Tavern up and let this go.
Yeah, I've seen a very similar situation, I think, on the first day with Collins, where there was 3 of the same minion in the shop in our practice run, where he did say that tripling a micro machine that earlier on is probably a bait, but there's no reason not to freeze the 2 that are already in the shop in the case that Bob gives you a token, and then it becomes more economically viable to go for that triple.
Gia, my brain is actually too small to know how this works with Omu. Like, that is so much gold in the early game. Dummit, I think, is currently working that situation out now as whether this additional economy from the second Elemental can actually help him ramp even faster here.
It doesn't feel like it off of first instinct, because I do think he wants to hit some of the tier 2 minions, but again, we saw RDU freezing there even though he wasn't necessarily going to buy it. What the first Elemental already being on his board means is that next turn he can actually level and buy, which normally with Omu, I think I see them most often level on the 6 gold turn and buy then, but he has that extra gold from this Elemental to still maintain a pretty wide board. But these are not good shop minions.
Not at all, no. Does have access to the cup at least, which normally the cup is like the savior of bad shops, right? If that's in there, you can normally at least put something together, but there is also the opportunity to just make a very, very greedy level play here again because of all this extra gold that he has had available. But I do respect this double buy. Like you said, the natural curve here for Omu dictates that you level next turn and not this one.
Right, the cup definitely giving him a bit more of fighting power, but it's still quite scary because it's a Yogg on the other side. Why don't we check in with Alexis Diesel, who Yogg is a hero that definitely is at his most powerful up to around 7 gold, I would say, where you get very good chances of taking down wins without any damage. But I do find the most interesting decisions with Yogg are when players decide to actually use the hero power to try and get extra stats, and when that's safe enough, when there's not necessarily the guarantee that you'll get the minion you want.
Yeah, personally, I tend to just use the Yogg hero power as an early game thing, and then just imagine that I don't have a hero power in the late game, because even if you are going to roll like 60%ers, right? Like, you're only saving 1 gold in a lot of positions to make that pay off, and you still whiff 40% of the time. So I do feel like you have to be high rolling to make that pay off in the late game. But just the advantage you get from buying minions cheaply in the early game, I still think makes Yogg a pretty powerful hero overall.
True, but honestly, that board right there, that was 50-50 for the hero power to just get you +1/+1 on the stats. And honestly, if I were just playing a normal game on ladder, nothing could have stopped me from going for the higher roll and sometimes also getting an extra refresh at the end of that. But Alexis Diesel going for the safe play, absolutely warranted here for that Party Rock combo.
I'm going to queue into Silvername on Toki here, who looks like he has done something fairly ambitious here, just rolling very early for a Tavern 3 minion instead of following the normal curves and picking up Tavern 2 minions. Does have a Salty Looter to his name, but certainly not the most impressive looking opening, and we see the big punish coming in. I think Silvername is going to have to hit something fairly spectacular fairly quickly, or he is going to start bleeding enormous amounts of health in these next few fights. He's queuing into RDU on Lich King right now, who you would imagine Lich King is extremely powerful this turn.
It is super scary, and Silvername does have 2 tier 3 minions on his shop, but they don't synergize with anything he already has going for the roll, and Bolvar is a pretty premium result. The captain also has some synergy with the Salty Looter and the Scallywag he already has on board, but would you maybe favor the Shredder just because of it being a better individual minion?
It's close, right? Because the captain is a 3/3 that adds +1/+1 to your Salty Looter, +1/+1 to your 2/1 Death Rattle, and +1/+1 to the minion that comes out of the 2/1 Death Rattle. So they're actually very comparable in stats overall between the two. So I think I might actually still favor the captain here, even though Collins is probably screaming not to get baited by pirates right now.
I think I would take it to mostly for the fact that it's a long-term buff on the Salty Looter just by virtue of playing a pirate. So on top of all the factors you said a while ago, you're not too sad to eventually sell it off later on anyway.
That's right. Yeah, I guess actually I misspoke. It's actually a +2/+2 buff to the Salty Looter in terms of immediate board presence, right? So that's actually quite a big deal.
But that first value trade from the Steward of Time onto the captain was pretty good for RDU. And never underestimate Bolvar though, just the 7 health and the fact that a lot of the minions on this tier don't have more than 3 health anyway means that it's able to clean up all the rest for a perfect fight.
Yeah, that Bolvar roll was huge for Silvername because like I said, a smaller minion there would have got him in trouble. And oh, Silvername, 28 health, bottom of the lobby, very, very weird looking board state. Now you're getting baited into playing pirates. Like, oh, this is not where you want to be right now.
Oh, it's true, but is this really a bait? I mean, he's on tier 3, that's a tier 3 minion, then he can still refresh and buy the tier 4. He goes for it. I am into this, and so he is looking for the Rip Snarl captain mainly, but you'll take another Bolvar.
Okay, sure. Yeah, you're right in that bait is probably the wrong word. Like, bait suggests that you're making a mistake in buying it there, which I don't think Silvername is. It's just... what I should have said, I guess, is you're being dealt pirates, and that's not really what you want to be being dealt, right? You still have to buy them because they're the best thing you're being offered, but you would much rather be building something else right now, I think.
And while we talk about Mama Bear being defining for Beast, Bran for Murloc, Genie for just about everything else for pirates, the direction-defining minion, in my opinion, is Captain Hogger, because if you don't actually find that, it is really tough to keep scaling the board with pirates. We do know that he is facing off against teammate Goddammit, so Silvername scuffs his positioning a little bit. Not super sure if that was entirely necessary, but maybe the fact that the Bolvar is there is it's the kicking point.
Insane. Actually, ends up insane because of the Reborn and Death Rattle sequencing. That was actually very hard to resolve at the end because of the weird sequencing with not only the Death Rattle Pirate from the Scallywag, but then also the Reborn and the Spawn of N'Zoth Death Rattle going off, but it ends up being a perfect tie, so very nicely engineered between the two players.
Absolutely. Checking in with Bootylicious now. He has the Bran and the Murlocs, and he is Jandis. The only small problem is that he's not on tier 5 just yet. He's facing off against RDU, who is extremely healthy, so it's just a decision of whether he feels safe enough to level at this point, because when you hit tier 5, you have access to the all-important King Bogurgle, which is one of the premium Jandis bounced.
It is, but I think the absolute premium target is the Primal Fin Lookout, which he could find right now. I'm actually a little surprised that Bootylicious is putting so much gold into poisoning all of his minions this early. I do think a few rolls might have been beneficial here just to look for one of those better payoff bounces now that he does already have the Bran available. But every Battlecry that he's playing is, of course, scaling his board quite significantly, not only with the poison effect, but also with that crowd favorite in play.
I am slightly worried for him, though, because everything you said is absolutely true. The poison on your minions doesn't matter so much this early when they're fragile and are very much just glass cannons. RDU has a decent-sized board here. Elemental Synergy definitely going to be rolling for Nomi after this fight.
Me first, says RDU. Actually, doesn't matter because there is the Spawn of N'Zoth leading, so he is going to be able to get that Genie value no matter what. Very nice for RDU. Ooh, picks up the Elemental triple as well, I believe, between the Water Droplet he has in hand and the Elemental he already has on board. That is a triple setup for him.
Yeah, that is very key because he's already on tier 5, so there's now potential to just discover into Lil Rag straight away and even maybe skip over the Nomi setup.
See what he ends up with here. This is going to be a pretty difficult turn to navigate, whether he wants to roll down on tier 5, whether he wants to use all this extra gold that he's going to get here just to push to 6 straight away while discovering a 6 drop as well. Looks like he immediately snaps into the rolls, stops now to consider both the Selfless Hero and I'm sure the Murozond as well. It's amazing. Like, this is an anomaly of the human condition that I'm pretty sure our memories aren't that bad. But have you ever seen a Murozond in the shop and remembered what your last opponent played without checking it? I don't think I've done that once. I have to check every single time. It was 20 seconds ago. How can I not remember that?
You're right, but purely because we were casting, he had a bunch of Murlocs. And
okay,
I can't really remember which ones. But the fact that RDU has a brand of his own, the big potential from the Murozond was maybe getting the brand. But oh my goodness, Golden Tavern Tempest. This is so nuts.
Golden Tavern Tempest with the brand, and he hits the Gar as well off the triple. And now that is so much extra value. Gets the Bran activation of the Stasis Elemental as well to put a bunch of extra Elementals in the shop. Rolls through them though. This is going to be a very hard turn to complete here for RDU, but I think he is just about going to get there with the Major Domo.
I really hope he got that in because it's going to be the biggest single Major Domo buff I've seen in a turn. It doesn't get to use his hero power though, which is really big. No additional value from the Genie.
That's actually huge. Yeah, not only that, but he also roped out playing probably the Arcane Assistant there, which would have been a +2/+2 buff to his entire board, and an additional buff from the Major Domo as well. So he could have been significantly stronger this turn, given a couple of extra seconds.
Depending on where that last trade go, it could have been a tie, but it will mean that Silver Name picks up the win here. We saw in RDU's first shop that round that there was a Captain Hogger. I do wish he could donate it to Silver Name. But for now, let's see what RDU can do. Another Tavern Tempest.
How are you still rolling Tavern Tempests? How have you not tripled any of these minions in your hand with the amount of elementals that you're generating?
I was about to ask exactly the same thing, but he has hit the Chef Nomi now, which is absolutely huge because there's now value in cycling all of these elementals outside of just looking for triples. Every single generation he gets from here on out is going to be huge.
Again with the Murozond. I hate this play. Like, I know it's technically correct in that situation, but you know your opponent had it utter trash. So what did you do? You just wasted 10 seconds buying that Murozond and selling the 3 minions, right? Like, I really don't like players doing that in situations where you know your opponent has nothing that you want from the Murozond.
It could just be that when you have this muscle memory of buying and selling and are able to react to what you've actually generated, it might even save you more time than looking over your opponent's composition.
Sure, no, okay, that is a good point. Yeah, that is another way of looking at it for sure.
Does end up selling the brand here because it's really only the Tavern Tempest that he can get value from now that he's committed to major elementals. Lil Rag at the very last second, and this is going to be a gigantic...
Yes,
okay.
I think actually probably Nomi closer to the front there because he actually does want a board space here, right? Before the Genie dies and gets the Reborn because it's golden. It's going to drop 2 elementals, so he actually needs a lot of board spaces here. Really wants this Murloc to go left. Does end up going right, so he's going to miss out on some value here. I think that was a small potential mistake there from RDU as well, not queuing up his Chef Nomi in the first position to try and open up some board space.
Does mean though that he will get to deal additional damage now that Igar has survived here, which is probably just the lethal here on XQN.
Yeah, very true. And speaking of lethal, Bootylicious is going to take the lethal for a guaranteed 8th place there as well. It doesn't matter who else is going to die. Bootylicious was in 8th place going into the round, so it looks like Bootylicious is going out in 8th place here as well. But RDU does send XQN straight down to the graveyard of 3 lesser acronyms where he belongs.
Yeah, only one can reign supreme, just like between RDU and Language Hacker. You have to pick one Romanian that you root for. Oh, triple potential on the Deflectobot, which is normally not a minion that you necessarily want to combine, but the fact that he was not able to get scaling on a secondary Deflectobot, I wouldn't mind the triple here.
Yeah, I think certainly the dance is going to happen though, and yeah, he is just treating that third Deflecto bot as a +2/+2. Considers that better than any potential card that he could triple into here, which I actually do kind of agree with as well.
That's true. Looking that he's just actually on tier 3 because he's been dancing this whole time, it absolutely makes sense. It's just that he is going to overshoot a little bit of gold, so I do want to see him level at some point if there is just going to be maximum dancing on the Deflector bot.
Yeah, he was going to sell the Free Dealing Gambler there, but then recognized that was a bad decision. Now he can go to 10 and just pick up the Deflecto bot here and just preserve the other minions in his hand. And he now finds another premium Divine Shield target with perfect gold allocation as well. This is very nicely done. This is a small detail that a lot of people miss while playing Daryl, is that you don't necessarily want to dance with every minion in your hand. You want to dance to a perfect curve where when you roll once, you have a multiple of 3 gold remaining after that point. So you're able to just continuously buy minions from the next shop as well. And Oliek was actually able to do that perfectly on a very difficult turn to navigate.
That is huge, especially since he did also end that next shop on another danceable target immediately with the Bronze Warden, so that justifies sometimes when you don't want to level as Daryl. It's because on tier 3 there are just quite a few Divine Shield minions at the moment. Crackling Cyclone also a big one here.
Yeah, this lobby is almost perfect for Daryl. It has Dragons in for the 2-1 Reborn, it has Elementals in for the 4-1 Divine Shield, and it has Mechs in for all the Divine Shields that makes available. The only thing Daryl is missing is that one token possibility from the Beast being banned, but Murlocs are available as well for the additional token.
Okay, that is certainly bait, but the problem is he cannot isolate the Bronze Warden without tripling the Deflecto bot. And so he does end up having to roll over. It feels bad.
That is horrific. What were there, 2 spaces in that shop that he'd frozen? He froze and bought 2 minions, so one of those 2 minions has to be exactly the Deflecto bot triple at that point. That is very unfortunate indeed.
Interesting, though, that he did get a possible reroll on the Bronze Warden with 2 minions that actually have some slight benefit if he picks up a different dragon. But at this point, he is going to just roll over, and he gets the triple now on the Micro Mummy.
And Gia, everyone's getting offered the Captain Hogger, apart from the one player that needs it, as far as we know from Silvername. Oliek, of course, turns it down there as well, just picks up a Sneeds for the maximum stats available that turn instead. Does get back his Bronze Warden, though, if he wants to now try and set this up on a Tavern 4-shop dance instead.
A while ago, while we were going crazy about the dancing turn, we did see Habu Gabu also bite the dust there. That's another bottom 4 finish for him, which means RDU has his work cut out for him. For Silvername here, this feels a little bit unintuitive to have an unstable ghoul with your Divine Shield comp, but he is facing his teammate.
Yeah, this is certainly one of the most creative ways I've seen for 2 players to try and tie with each other. But honestly, with Silvername on 2 and Dummit on 31, you could have just argued, like Silvername, go ahead, like try and win this fight as hard as you possibly can. But who am I to judge, Gia? They have pulled it off yet again. Another perfect tie from the 2 players. Absolutely insane stuff.
Amazing. I feel like this is the first time we've seen a player actively buy a minion to scuff their comp for the team fight instead of just kind of replacing the positioning. And I don't know how they're able to manage perfect ties there, because if one thing goes wrong or too far in the other direction, Silvername was just out there.
Yes, there is certainly an element of luck to it. You know, we've praised players multiple times for like, wow, that was so well set up. Like, you can't set it up 100% of the time, right? You're never going to get your stats reporting 100% tie unless you're right in the early game. But you can get it as close as possible and as common as possible and just rely on a little bit of good fortune. And that's what a lot of these players are starting to do more and more very well as the tournament goes on.
And hugely rewarding now for Goddammit and Silvername, because they are the only complete team still standing in this top 4. RDU, of course, having to shore up Habu Gabu, and Alexis having to compromise for Oliesh. Although Oliesh with the 5th place finish is not too bad whatsoever.
Yeah, pretty nice lobby for the black team overall. But yeah, certainly Dummit and Silvername are looking in pretty promising shape. I will say that I think Silvername is about tapped out based on what we saw from his comp. He's very, very strong right now, but when you look at the scaling that, say, Alexis has here, with the Amalgadons coming down, with the Genie still potentially giving him some insane outcomes, and then what RDU in particular is doing, I do think Silvername is probably next on the chopping block right now.
I would agree. Alexis Diesel does have this elemental synergy. I'm not sure how quickly it's going to scale, but it's a big deal that he misses on the Divine Shield on his Amalgam, which is going to be more difficult for him to put together that type of scam comp to try and counter on the other side.
That was such a clutch Wind Fury trade. The 17 health on the cleave looked so important, but then suddenly the 13 health on the Wind Fury minion became far more important to be able to create the value trade. And yeah, as predicted, Alexis Diesel is going to put an end to Silvername's lobby. But shoutouts to Silvername. I think he's done great there. He obviously had a bad start. He was playing a mediocre hero. And when that happens, you have to scrap for top 4. That's if you're playing ladder, that's how you gain MMR, right? Your bad games, you look for 4th or 5th. Your good games, you look for 1st. And I think in Silvername's position in this tournament, it's very much the same there. Recognized he was in a poor position and just scrapped for every single position that he could find. And I think did very, very well to end up 4th there.
And I think it also just... Oh, wow. Did Goddammit just die there from first place?
I mean, have you seen RDU's board?
Okay. That is true, but I was going to bring up a point where, because Silvername knew that he was in a bad spot, maybe that's why he was so willing to play the Ghoul and sometimes just die there straight up to his teammate. He's just saying, I don't even want to scratch you to give you the best chance of finishing even higher because I already know my run is finished. But it seems all for naught if Goddammit did actually... he didn't get quite knocked out, but that was a huge chunk of damage he took.
Yeah, it was a big hit. Finds himself down in 3rd place now, but it will be Dummit, I believe, that's facing the Ghost here. Yes, because Alexis and RDU are facing off here. And I think with the 15 health that Alexis has available, he's going to find himself in rocky territory. Have not visited RDU in some time, so I'm sure we will be shocked and appalled by the size of his board. Yep, absolutely. Look at the size of those minions, Gio.
I would like a Gar Hall of Fame here because I feel like this is in 2nd place currently that we've seen this weekend with 300 health. There was a 400 one at some point, and RDU still has time to get up there. But the real kicking point here is that Alexis was not really able to find poison on his amalgams, which means that there's very little counterplay to a composition like this. If the Deadly Spore can maybe hit the Gar and the Crackling Cyclone hits the Molten Rocks, but it's already too late for that, then he could have survived with a little HP left, potentially.
Sorry, so what you were saying was the exact opposite of what ended up happening, right? Did I get that right? Yeah, okay. Just wanted to be sure.
But this is perfect for RDU. His Genie still ends up dying, so of course he gets value while also taking out the opponent.
And it dies again, and there are multiple 6 drops left over in play, which means this is going to be roughly 1 million damage going over to Alexis Diesel, and RDU once again is going to be securing a top 2 finish. And I think we'd like to take a look at Dummit here, because RDU's job is mostly done, and Dummit knows what he has to do to be able to hunt this board state down from RDU, because he just lost against it in the previous fight before the one we just watched.
Correct, and he's already accumulated some of those tools in the hand, all of these meant for a Murloc Poison transition. Honestly, they're still missing Divine Shield generators because the rest of his board could pretty much just be useless outside of maybe the taunt to help you direct some hits.
Look at how tiny he is, Gia. It's so adorable in comparison to what RDU is doing. So yeah, he's absolutely doing the right thing. Goes for max rolls on the Amalgadon, hits absolute steaming garbage for every single adapt on the Amalgadon. That's unfortunate. But he is just going to try and have to build up as many poisonous minions as he possibly can.
Didn't hit the Toxin off of the Primal Fin either. He has another roll on it. But on top of that, there's just not enough Divine Shields to get enough poison hits.
He does have that Divine Shield on his Amalgadon that's going to come out from the Nadina, though, which certainly can end up being helpful.
We can do the math pretty much straight up here, right? There is just 4 maximum poison hits on the other side, and all of the other minion attack is irrelevant here, so that will mean it's 100% for RDU.
Oh, the discrepancies. Oh my goodness. How the other half lives, Gia.
But it's funny that when it does get to points like this, it is really just Murlocs that have the chance of taking down the elementals. The cycle and I don't think that's how evolution works, but it all comes back to primitive minions being able to take down these giant elementals.
Yeah, pretty sure that's the exact opposite of how evolution works, Gia, actually, if you want to get technical about it.
Yep.
But regardless, it's going to look like RDU with another crushing victory. We asked the question, right? Could he possibly pick up where he left off yesterday? And the answer, after 4 rounds now, is a defining and definitive yes. RDU is just absolutely dominating this tournament right now.
It is just a streak of unimaginable quality. It's super rare that we see this in Constructed even, and I would think that's even rarer to see in Battlegrounds because there's so many moving parts. But just the fact that RDU has been able to put in this incredible performance continuing from yesterday has to mean that even a team with the confidence of Goddammit and Silvername have to be quaking in their boots a little bit right now.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. It was a good lobby for them, for sure, with Silvername scrapping for the 4th and then Dummit hanging around for a little bit after that as well. But with the power of what RDU's putting in, I think he is just going to have a small lead there at the top. Yeah, Dummit and Silvername have certainly closed the gap. But again, it's closer than you might suspect, right? Because right now you have to shine the spotlight on Habu Gabu as not really putting the work in terms of results for his team right now. RDU doing all the heavy lifting in trying to secure that lion's share of the $10,000 prize pool.
And by virtue of that, the black and green team have been able to creep a little bit closer. It's just 1 and 2 points of difference here because they've been putting those consistent middle ground finishes in as a team. In terms of the pattern of how the points are broken down between the 4 teams, we're seeing this a lot similar to day 1, where it was 3 teams close to each other, and unfortunately the white team lagging behind around the halfway point, which is where we're at right now. Yesterday it was the same distribution, but in the opposite direction, with one team super far ahead. So I do think that this makes for a little bit more drama and intensity, but still I don't want to count the yellow team out just yet because we've only seen 50% of the games today.
Yeah, and obviously the dynamic as to, you know, which placements are important has changed here because we are now in the finals and these players are just straight up scrapping for position, right? Like 3rd is just outright better than 4th. Your prize money increases at that point. You finish 3rd instead of finishing 4th. Whereas on Friday or Saturday, the breakpoint really just was at that top 2. You were either in that top 2 or you were out of it. So the fact that one of the teams is being cast off a little bit towards the bottom is actually even worse for them in this position because they're even losing sight of 3rd place in this spot and kind of relegating themselves to the wooden spoon in this position.
And because we've already reached the halfway point, you can probably expect to see the players that are falling a bit behind go for riskier strategies, maybe going for heroes like Reno that can end up being extremely strong, maybe even the Cat if things work out for them. It does have to mean that they need to be a bit more adventurous with their picks to compensate for the big gap falling behind. In contrast, the other 3 teams that are close to each other might continue with their consistent strategies. But really, Sottle, the only consistent thing I've been seeing today is RDU with giant elementals.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems to be his comfort zone right now is just curving into that Genie, curving into that Gar. He even mentioned earlier, I was watching his stream again before we went live today, and he threw out the line, if they don't patch Genie soon, I'm going to be rank 1 on ladder. Quote RDU. Like, that happened. He feels very, very comfortable in this current metagame. I think he's one of the few that really has adjusted super quickly to this position.